we would like to welcome back, sort of, Jennifer Niven, the author of All the Bright Places, with her new book, Breathless, which just came out yesterday and has been getting some great reviews, both in the trades and on Goodreads. And we are so lucky to have her in conversation with Danielle Paige, who is the author of the Dorothy Must Die series, and she is also the author of the forthcoming, co-author of the forthcoming Ravens book, which is coming out in November. And I did want to mention, if you haven't gotten your book yet, Boswell has signed Pippins with a message from Jennifer, which is so cool. You never see this. And I'll send you a link to purchase during it. So with that said, I am going to have the more interesting people talk now. And let's give a big hand and welcome to Jennifer Niven and Danielle Paige.
Hi guys, I am so excited that Jennifer's here with me, and I think we just should kick it off by me first just asking, how the heck is everybody? How are you, Jennifer?
I am good, and I hope you are too. This is such a weird time, as we know, and I'm so glad that we can do something like this. And it's so great. We saw each other not too long ago on my Instagram, and it's like so great to see you again.
I know, it's like you miss everybody. It's just the faces. I mean, always in these boxes now, but it's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you too.
So congratulations on the book. I read it this week and finished it today on my porch. It's just so beautiful. It is left me breathless. It's just romantic and you know, that first love stuff I'm a sucker for, and you do it so well, so honest and beautiful, and thank you for this book. Before we get started, can you tell everyone else, I know what it's about, but can you tell everyone who's here that doesn't know what it's about?
Absolutely. And it's so interesting, like, you know, I know you know this, Danielle, like, you know your other books so well, like the elevator pitch.
Yes.
So I'm just like getting used to this one. Okay, so it's about a girl who, right before her high school graduation, her name is Claude, she learns from her parents that they're separating. And for her, this is like the whole floor has been like pulled out from under her. Kind of like I feel the whole world has been pulled out from under all of us this year in 2020. She and her mother go to this remote Georgia island. They leave everyone behind, that like her best friend, the boy she likes, her dad, her home, her hometown. And they go to this island where there's very little cell phone service, very little Wi-Fi. And she meets a boy. And it's a love story, but it's also, I think, more than that. It's a coming of age story. It's about Claude really finding herself and really finding the floor again beneath her feet.
Well, I think that's a beautiful pitch, and it really sums up what I just read. I love it. I want to know, although I kind of already know, what was the inspiration for this book?
So there were two it's very personal. Kind of in the way All the Bright Places was personal for me, but this one was personal in two ways. And that one, it's very personal to the 18-year-old me who went through this exact same thing. Like a week before high school graduation, my parents told me that they were separating. I wasn't allowed to talk about it to anyone, which was really hard because I couldn't talk to my best friend. I couldn't say a word about it. And 5 days after graduation, my mom and I moved away, and it was just a summer of like firsts and being away from everyone I knew and loved, and really trying to like put that floor back beneath my feet. Then it's also personal in a different way, in that when I was writing the story, like the book all these years later, I went to this island. It's one of two islands that really has inspired the setting for the book. And I met my now husband. And on that first and second day that we were together, we had all these adventures. I mean, we've had so many adventures on this island, but those days in particular really informed all these adventures that Claude and the boy in the book, Jeremiah, have in the story.
So did you have the story all mapped out and then you met Justin? Or did you meet Justin and then the story came from that? Like, where did it Because is this like that you wrote, I mean, honestly, if this were a fantasy book, I'd say that you wrote the story and you made him come true. Is that what happened?
Kind of feel like I conjured it, Danielle. It's like, it's so strange. And my friends, you know, have been saying that as well. But I had Jeremiah Crew, this character, in my mind for about 2 years before I met Justin Conway. So they have the same initials, which is kind of strange. But there's a lot that they have in common, which really is strange because I knew who Jeremiah was before I went to this island and met this man I didn't know before then. And like Jeremiah, my husband walks like barefoot all over the island. They have very similar backstories. It's very strange, but at the same time, like Jeremiah is very much himself as well. And I think that's true when you're writing any personal characters. They also really have to become their own wonderful creations themselves.
I think that's so incredible and such a great love story. And you write such beautiful love stories. And without giving away where the story is going, how do you know when you start writing what the ending is? Are you good? And because you give us happy endings and sometimes you don't give us happy endings, do you know upfront what you're going to do to us?
Well, that's a great question. I almost always know the endings. You know, the beginnings sometimes can be tricky and they're fun to work out, but I don't always know where I'm starting the story. I almost always know where I'm going to end up. And so I actually wrote the ending of Breathless while I was on the island that first time when I had known Justin for 2 days, and he had to leave the island on the second day for work. And so I was there by myself for the rest of the time. And I just remember like going by his house and listening to this song and like writing I went back to the inn where I was staying. I wrote all this stuff down and really so much of the heart of that scene that I wrote way back then is in the last scene of the book.
That is so beautiful. That makes me happy. I want to know, let's see, there's something else I wanted to ask you. Sorry, I just forgot my question because I was so swept up in your answer. Claudine, like when you created her and you said that she's coming from you, is it just a younger version of you? Is this what you were like as a teenager? Is this like just Jennifer with all of her knowledge now as younger self? What do you?
I love this question, and she's like me in a lot of ways, but she's definitely the younger me with all of the knowledge I have now. I mean, we're very similar, but she also, I think, was much stronger that summer than I was. And I think that she got through this in a much more empowered way. I mean, one thing I wanted to do when I wrote this book is kind of write the book I wanted at that age when I was going through the parental divorce and the heartache of that, my world turning upside down and feeling like I was isolated and having to find my way again in the world. And I wanted to give Claude a really empowered version of that story so that by the end of that summer, hopefully, and this isn't a spoiler, but that she could feel much stronger and go forth into the world, this empowered person. And it took me a while to get there.
Well, but you did it. And you said that you're a plotter, but what does that mean? Do you have a big board with the outline and the sticky notes, or like, how do you do it?
I'm kind of a hybrid of a pantser, like by the seat of my pants, and a plotter. So I always think of it as kind of being on a road trip, and you have the general, route of where you're going, and you know the main parts that you're going to, the main places you're going to go through in the terms of a story. I know the main beats that I want, the main emotional beats, the plot beats. I have a very general idea of the story, and the characters are where I really, really, really do the work and the plotting. I mean, I feel like if I know my characters inside and out, and part of that is like creating playlists for the characters.
I love that.
Like, it's so great. And like, sometimes I'll write to that, especially if I'm writing dual narration, it helps to drop in emotionally into their world. So that helps me like really know the characters. And then once I'm ready, then I start writing. And I do storyboard. I come from a film, like you do, Danielle, I come from a film writing background. So I do a lot of storyboarding. So it's like, sometimes it's physical index cards. Sometimes it's like index cards through Scrivener, this program that I use,
Oh,
and it's great. And like sometimes I'll even storyboard to music, so I'll do different songs for different scenes.
and when it comes to character creation, I know that Justin came from that Jeremiah came from Justin, or they informed each other. But what about the mom character? I know that you lost your mom. I know that she there's some similarities there. Can you speak to that? Because I think that I also lost my mom. I totally get it.
I'm so sorry that you've gone through that too. It's such a heartbreak, and there are definitely similarities. I mean, my parents, the parents in the book are definitely Claude's parents, but they are informed by mine too. And my mom and I think the mom in the book in particular is like mine, and that she was like such an exceptional, amazing person. And she always encouraged me to like go after my dreams and never limit myself. And she and I were so close, and we were so much alike. So it was always, there's this line in the book where Claude talks about like, it's always been Claude and Lauren and Claude, the Llewellyn women, like all her life. And now suddenly it's not, even though they're there together that summer, it feels very different. And I think so much of like the journey that I've had since my mom died is it was always Jennifer and Penny and Jennifer, the Niven women. And I've had to find my place in the world again. And I've had to figure out what my role is and redefine myself in this world my dad I lost years ago as well. So without either parent, I'm an only child. So I think part of that, like that struggle for like identity, that part of Claude's journey. So that's like the most personal part of my parents that I put in there.
And the mom is a writer. And did you that's from your mother too, right?
Yes, my mom was also a writer. She wrote mostly literary biography and these fantastic books, all of which are like this thick. And just as my uncle says, like not books you could carry on an airline and read on an airplane, but like she was just brilliant, so brilliant.
And do you think that she informed you as a writer, like, or your decision to write? Like, where did that come from for you? Like, what was did you always know you were going to write? I know that you were in TV too. Can you speak a little bit to that?
I definitely it was funny because when I was younger, I loved writing more than anything else. It was like my mom taught me very early on to write out my feelings and express myself because I would keep a lot of stuff inside, but I was very emotional. And so I remember like one of my first books I wrote when I was in 4th grade and we moved from Maryland to Indiana, and it was called My Life in Indiana, or I Will Never Be Happy Again. And I gave it very dramatically to my parents, and my dad was like, I'm so glad you're encouraging your feelings. But that was such, kind of a great exercise for me because I started realizing you could put yourself on the page. And my mom was always so encouraging, but to her, like she said to me millions of times, if I had wanted to be an astronaut or work at a bank or be an accountant or wherever, like whatever I wanted to do in the world, she would have been as thrilled and supportive as long as I got to do what I wanted to do. So she definitely informed not only my writing, because I learned everything I learned about writing from my mom, but just so much about life.
And I think having that example of you actually understood what it meant to be a writer in the world, which is kind of, it's not always easy. There's a bit of a hustle in finding your place as a writer. Do you think that helped you a lot as well?
Definitely. I'm so glad you asked that question because like Danielle, I remember thinking like watching my mom write her books, and these long, long books that took years of research because they're always the first, novel or the first nonfiction, like the first biography of Carl Sandburg or James Earl Jones. She wrote a book with him, and it was the years of research. Cool. I was like, the stress, the research, the demands of it felt so intimidating that I remember thinking, okay, that's great, but I think I want to be like, not that there aren't demands, but I was like, I want to be a rock star or like a detective or an archaeologist, all things that are very demanding as well. But for a long time, I just pushed aside the writing when I was in high school and college, and then I couldn't not write. So
when did it happen for you? Like, what was the moment that told you, I've got to do this? Did the book come to you? What was it?
It was actually, it was when my parents were separating and I had all of these feelings and I didn't know what to do with them and I couldn't make sense of them. And I felt so isolated because they, my dad didn't want me talking about their impending separation and divorce to anyone. So I had to do something with it. So I started writing again. And that's when it happened. And then I didn't stop after that.
That's incredible. Can you tell us a little bit about do you know anything about where this book is going? Has it already been picked up for TV or film? Or are there plans in the works?
I can't say much, but I can say that the wonderful producers of All the Right Places, the Netflix film, the wonderful producers who did that have optioned Breathless. So I'm very excited to be working with them again.
Very exciting. And you get to write the script?
Yes.
That is exciting.
I'm excited about that. And I'm also writing the script for Holy Empty Universe.
That's what I thought. That's so cool.
That's a lot of scripts, Danielle. I'm going to have to come to you because you're like the script master.
I am so happy to read any scripts. I love writing scripts. I miss it. Like I'm hopefully getting to write a script for my thing that's happening, but I can't talk about it yet. But I told you, but I can't say it on camera because I'll get in trouble. So but anyway, yeah. So what about love stories in general? Like what was the first love story that you read that like popped your cherry that you knew that like you were in love with love stories?
What's really interesting is I was a huge reader. I still am. I was a huge reader as a child. Both my parents were enormous readers. We had a little library in our house. But for me, it wasn't even so much books as it was lyrics. And I remember I was so into music because I, again, wanted to be a rock star, even though I can only...
Love that. Can you sing?
No, I can't. But marginally, but that's it. And
I'm sorry, totally could do it.
I mean, why not? And so I remember listening to, my parents had all these great albums, and I remember listening to Fleetwood Mac's Rumors. And I remember that was the first moment when I was like, wow, they put their breakups into this album.
My God, their breakups.
Right. And it blew my mind. So I remember thinking that is amazing. And that's so much that's a love story, and it's a love story of a sad love story because the breakups, but it was so striking to me. And I thought if I could do that kind of thing. And then Jane Eyre and
I love Jane Eyre.
Sense and Sensibility and all the Jane Austen. There are always those as well, but there's just something about the music that did it.
I love that. And what about movies? What was your first heartbreak or first love story that you're what were you in love with?
Oh my gosh, this will totally date me, but Footloose.
I love Footloose.
Footloose, I loved Footloose and Ren McCormick, and I loved the love stories that just felt so painfully real. And I loved it if it was a bit unrequited, or there were obstacles from the outside world, or if somehow they found each other and they were the only ones who understood each other. I just loved anything like that. I was a complete sucker for.
Oh, I love that.
And St. Elmo's Fire, for some reason, was my favorite movie.
Oh my God, I was just Rob Lowe and Mary Wynn. We just wanted them to get together, and then
totally
and I cast.
Yeah, exactly.
It was just so great. It was heartbreaking and wonderful, and it felt like, and that's what your books feel like. It's that they feel so real. Going back to character a little bit more, do you ever do you ask yourself questions about the character? How do you get there? Or does someone just pop into your head?
Some of them, it's interesting, and I'm sure you could speak about this as well. Some of the characters just come to you and they're ready-made, and they're just came from nowhere in a way. And then others are a bit more of a struggle. And it's interesting for me because with my YA novels, I've written personal books and personal characters. Violet was very personal, but she was also a lot harder to write than Finch. Finch was loosely inspired by a boy I once loved, but he was so much easier. He came so loud and so I'm here. And Violet, I had to dig for more. So I think one of the things that does help me is making those playlists, because it is such, like, again, music is such an influence, and listening to these songs and feeling the emotion of these songs I was recently able to meet Ryan O'Neal from Sleeping at Last, and I was just so excited. I'm virtually meeting him because his music, like that kind of music, really informed All the Bright Places, like listening to Sleeping at Last in particular. So it's that kind of like emotional connection you make to the characters. Like, what would they listen to?
Well, what do these characters listen to?
What would, in Breathless or in
Claudine listen to? Like, what does Claude listen to?
Claude? It's interesting. I just posted a playlist for Claude on my Instagram today. So like I just kind of put it together because there were like 200 songs on there. So I tried to cull it down a little bit, but she's very into like older stuff and she loves French music. So she and her best friend Saz kind of like love all things French. It makes them feel very far away from their boring Midwestern hometown. And they love Francois Hardy, and they also just love like kind of older stuff, 80s stuff and 70s, and just all there. It's very eclectic and very all over the place.
I love that. What does Jeremiah listen to?
Jeremiah is more like, oh gosh, like Harry Nilsson. He's more like kind of like retro, groovy, like 70s music. He also loves the song Joy to the World because, of course, well, his name is in it. But he loves the feeling of that song. And Chris Stapleton, I mean, I think he's more of a kind of moody, things a bit slower, I think. Claude's a bit more all over the place, but she does like some poppy stuff as well.
Cool. I just realized that I was supposed to have you read a couple of pages when we started. Will you close with that? We're not there yet. We're going to ask, I'm going to see if there's any questions from everybody else that's listening. And hold on, I'm going to check and see if there's some chatty things. A lot of people are just saying hi to you. And there some people have had similar experiences and want to express that, but I'm not going to read those out loud because that's for you to read. Okay, what is your most memorable memory writing Breathless?
Oh my gosh, definitely meeting my husband. The most memorable memory is an adventure that I put into the book, and it happened the first day we met. And we were, the island where I met him, there are no vehicles on the island unless they are like the 11 people who live there or the National Park Service. So there are no roads. It's just like sand, sandy roads and dirt roads. And he had a truck because he was living there at the time. And we took the truck and we drove off into the night, and he was going to show me like the moon and the beach and he turned the lights off in the truck, or the headlights off. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, there are like alligators out there and wild hogs and we could hit anything. And like the city girl in me, because I'm such an LA girl, was just like, but I'm not going to freak out in front of this man I just met. And he said this lovely thing about how someone once told him that we all have the ability to see in the dark. We just have to trust that. And I was like, God, that's such a wonderful metaphor. And then we drove through the dark, and the only thing lighting our way were like the fireflies. And I thought, even if I never see this man again, and I knew I would, I will never forget this moment. And so I went back that night and wrote it into like what became the book.
I think that's so beautiful. I love that. That question was from Jennifer Doug, by the way. Thank you, Jennifer. We have another question. What advice do you have for someone who maybe didn't have a good first love?
I would say it is so easy to come out of something like that and not feel like you'll ever find love again, or you won't not believe in it as much maybe as you were believing in it before. But I would say like part of so much of life is just feeling things and the experience of feeling things, the good and the bad and the heartache and the wonderful. So just know that I've been through many, many heartaches in my life, and it took me quite a while to find the man of my dreams, like my person. Doesn't mean it will take you that long, but he's out there, she's out there, and they're out there. And just believe in that, believe in it, and believe in yourself most of all, because I'm sure you are amazing and you're resilient and you are stronger than you know. and you're very deserving of love, and that's always something really important to remember.
Okay, I'm gonna cry. I love that. Okay, the next question. Let's see. Okay, that's Breathless is in dual narration. And is Breathless in? I don't understand this question. I'm gonna skip this one.
Okay.
I'm always interested in the process from book to movie. How do you feel about the movie version of All the Right Places? What was the most interesting part of the process for you?
The most interesting part was probably the fact that you go from writing, when you're writing a book, it's at the beginning, it's you and the computer screen or you and the piece of paper, and there's no one else. And it's a very like isolated experience. You're with your characters, but it's just you and your words. What really is interesting is then taking that story that you created like on your own, and then all these other people come into it, and everyone has an opinion about it, and everyone sees it differently, but they're all care about it the way that you do. So that to me at first was like, it wasn't jarring, it wasn't upsetting, but it was just interesting. It really was. And just to know that all these people were just as invested as I was felt very special, and it made me feel very fortunate and grateful, because again, this is such a personal story. And you know, the other thing is I wanted it to be a 15-hour movie because I wanted to write every single scene that's in the book, but you can't do that with film. There's not as much, you know, room on the screen. So I had to learn to like what could stay and what could go, and to be okay with that. But I think in the end, I feel really good about it, because I think in the end, what we all really cared about was capturing the feel of the book and the way it made you feel. And for me, at least, it made me feel that way, and made me feel the way I felt when I wrote it.
And I love that that because you wrote the script, it sounds like you. It felt it really captured what was in the book, and so beautiful, and such great actors. It's so cool. For me, I started out in soap, so I always had that experience of what I wrote was like immediately there, and there was an audience for it. And now
Backwards in terms of, or not backwards, the other way.
this was, but your experience, it's got to be so surreal to finally see your characters on screen. Do you ever think about, and going off script again, do you ever think about, would you ever want to do a sequel to what happened, to find out what happened after All the Bright Places, or after Breathless, or after Holding? Like, do you ever think that you want to revisit your characters, or do you feel like this is the moment you want to capture, and then you're done?
It's interesting because like I generally feel like, okay, like I'm on to the next thing, I'm on to the next idea, I'm living in that world. But getting the chance to do the scripts for the film versions is really cool, because in a way you get to revisit them, and sometimes you change things up. You get to like, you know, do something different with, you know, this character or this ending or these scenes or this storyline, and that feels really fun. Maybe after I finish the scripts for the other books, then I'll have to think about that again. But every now and then I do think about like doing something, a kind of sequel to All the Bright Places in particular. So who knows, maybe.
Do those characters, do you feel like they're still with you? Like, do you feel like you know what they're doing right now, or do you, when you close a door, you're done?
I feel like I know. I feel like they're still with me, and I feel like I know what they're doing. And it is interesting because the more characters you add, you know, the more books you do, the more people you're like carrying around with you, and they become like a family. Like they really do. So you feel like you know them that well, and you know what they're doing in the world and where they are.
I love that. Emily Dittmar asked the last question, and I'm going to add another one that she's asking. What's the biggest difference between script writing and book writing? Would you ever do a screenplay first?
That's interesting. The difference, I think, is that every word counts in a book, but it really counts in a script. You just have to make sure there's like nothing extra. It all has to matter. So each word has to have a purpose for being there. And I think that I did my training with script writing, and I think that's helped me in writing novels, because it helps with dialogue. It helps you with really looking at all the words and making sure, because I tend to overwrite. So it helps me like then go back and edit and scale back before I give it to anyone else. But yes, I think I would think about doing a script first. I think it would be really interesting to do that and then do a book. I think would be and I'd have to talk to Danielle about that because
Yeah,
she
totally talk about it.
but yes, definitely.
I think you would be great at it because I think you have great dialogue. And speaking of which, how do you keep your dialogue teen? Like, how do you capture that? Do you and I'm not saying I do this, but do you listen at coffee shops when you hear teenagers? Where do you, or is it just, do you watch a lot of the CW like I do? I watch a lot of Riverdale. Like, how do you keep it young?
I mean, I watch every teen movie and every teen show that, whether it's on the CW or Netflix or Hulu or wherever, I'm definitely watching those. So, one, I'm a fan. And then two, like inside, I'm really probably 15. I mean,
Same.
right? So it's like, I think I'm so grateful for that. Like, because when you're 15 inside, as we are, Danielle, like,
Yes.
then you can access those voices.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the language may have changed, and then you get like a really good young reader who you trust to help you with that. But the feelings are the same. And I think that is so important.
Okay, and I think I'm just going to read this one because it's so nice. Okay, I read the acknowledgments of this is from D. Davidson. I read the acknowledgments of every book I finish. I'm not going to lie, the acknowledgments and Breathless left me in tears. I think it was a book that I needed to read, that I was meant to read at this time in my life, but even more so, I was meant to read the acknowledgments. When did you learn to live the reminders you put at the end, to open yourself up to love and possibility, to almostness and maybe, to use your voice to let others end, choose your future, choose your body, choose yourself, and go out there and write your life?
Oh my gosh, first of all, thank you so much. It's beautiful. And thank you for reading and just for being lovely. I think it's been a process of learning that just as I grow over the years. I wish I could say I learned it in this moment or that moment, but I mean, a lot of me was informed by my wonderful parents who are no longer here. My mom always told me both of them always encouraged me to follow my dreams, to believe in myself, to never doubt the things important to me, to use my voice, especially for others who may not have one. And my mom also taught me to leave the world lovelier than how you found it. So I try really to follow all those things. But in terms of all those things I wrote at the end of the acknowledgments, it's been a process. It's just, hopefully as humans, we continue to grow, evolve, and change and learn. And that's over years of doing all those things.
Do you find that it's easier to open yourself up and pour it out on the page now, or when you were younger? Does it make, do you feel like with every book, does it get any easier, or is each book a new challenge?
It's a great question. I feel like it's gotten easier for me. I remember when I was getting my master's in screenwriting, my fellow screenwriting students were saying they didn't think I could really open myself up on the page the way I needed to, because they were writing these very personal, very emotional scripts, and I was writing there's a Midwestern town that thinks Disney's coming to build a theme park there, and I thought it was so funny and cute. But I understood what I understood what they were saying, though, and I think I always carried that around in my mind. And I started my career in nonfiction, and I did adult fiction. And there were pieces of me in those, but it wasn't until All the Bright Places that I really put myself on the page. And I had to give myself permission that just write it. Don't write with anyone over your shoulder. You don't have to show it to anyone if it's just too personal and it's too painful. Just do it and see if you can do it. And I did it, and I was so proud that I could do that. So I think that was, 2013 that I was writing that. So really since then, I've learned that I have to be more open, and also in talking about issues, whether it's mental health or sex positivity or bullying or whatever issues there are that I write about, you owe it to your readers, especially young readers, to just be honest and be open and just be yourself and let them in.
And I love how honest the book is and how much you've put yourself out there and made the story so real. Is it difficult writing about sex? Like, how do you approach that?
Definitely. I mean, it's, especially writing for young people, it's it's difficult. It's challenging. And I think I had to have the conversation with myself that I had to have during the writing of All the Bright Places, when I was so intimidated by writing about suicide and about mental health issues, depression, loss, all these things for teens, because you feel this huge responsibility, which it is, and which you should feel. So I was feeling that same way with Breathless. And I just thought, all I can do is just write honestly and just write it. Like, there were so many times I wanted to edit the sex scenes as I was writing them, but I'm like, you know what, I have a wonderful, amazing editor at Random House. Like, she will tell me if this is too much. I just have to write them. But I also wanted to write them, again, responsibly, but also with, like, I wanted Claude, the girl, to be empowered. And that was really important to me.
And I think that you absolutely accomplished that. And I think that there's so many stories, and since I would write a lot of fantasy, there's so many stories where there's one guy, there's a girl who thinks that there's just this one guy for her, and that is the goal. And I thought it was refreshing and very realistic to see someone who wants to have sex because she wants to have sex, and this is a milestone for her own personal growth, and she's choosing. And I felt that very much. And that was what you were.
Absolutely. And that's something that I guess I feel like so many times, especially in young adult, like, female sexuality is treated, it's in a box almost. And like, you have to, the girls have to be almost apologetic about feeling sexual or feeling desire or any of those kinds of feelings. And I didn't want Claude to, or her friends really, to express that. I wanted them to really own themselves and who they are, and their desires are included in that.
And I loved her best friend. I thought that she was so great. And I loved watching the evolution of that relationship as you're with it's another, we've seen a lot of stories where it's about, a boyfriend, girlfriend who are about to break up because they have to go to college, but we don't necessarily address the friendship breakup that might happen. And I thought that was, I'm not saying the breaking up, that's what I mean. But just addressing like that fear, because for a lot of people, your best friend is the great love story of your youth, not the person you feel like sexual feelings towards. So I feel like it was so nice to see that covered.
Thank you. That was so important. And that's, I mean, how I felt when my best friend Joe and I we went to separate schools, and it is that I think more people need to see that on the page, because this happens like not only like right before college, but it happens in life so many times. And those friendships are so much a part of who we are and who we become.
Well, I loved it. And let's see, I'm going to keep reading a couple more questions because there's like about 3 more. And then I think we should probably close with you reading, if you feel okay. Okay. Donovan Taylor wants to know, I noticed that large bodies of water are apparent in both books. Is this intentional?
That's so interesting. And someone else pointed that out to me recently. And believe it or not, I had never noticed that in my work. But yes, I'm yes, it's not intentional, but I know where it comes from. Let's put it that way. It's because I grew up on the water. When I was in Maryland, before, I wrote the book about moving to Indiana and never being happy again, my parents and I lived on the Chesapeake Bay. And so water was like the first thing I remember, is living on water and being around water. And my dad was a sailor, so it was always being literally on the water. And then I've lived in Los Angeles for a long, 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 long time. And my husband and I actually divide our time between Los Angeles and coastal Georgia. Although we've been in Georgia now since March with the pandemic, but we're also like 2 blocks from the water. And it's just, water is so important to me. And I think it's because it's some of my earliest memories. And I also equate it to like my parents and my very fortunately lucky, happy childhood with them.
I feel you on that. I miss my mom too. So there is another one, anonymous attendee. Oh, Kay Blake is saying hi to us, not a question, so we're saying hi back. Emily Ditmar is asking, what are Jennifer Niven's personal feelings about Post-its?
Oh, Post-its. I love them. I love the brightly colored ones, and I use them for so many things. They are great when you like need to do a storyboard and you don't actually feel like doing it on the computer and you can't find index cards. They're actually like, I think I did Breathless. I actually did do Breathless with Post-its instead, and I put them on the back of my door in my studio and just like move them all around, and I think they're amazing. Mm-hmm.
I did that too. I used Post-its on a big board, like, and I moved them. I think it's better than I love index cards, but Post-its are great because you can stick them.
Yeah.
Okay, so one more question. What is next for you? Do you have another book that's percolating? I know that you're writing scripts. Is there another book maybe you can tell us about? What can you tell us?
I can tell you I just finished a collaboration with another author, another YA author. I can't tell you anything other than that, except we just finished the book. It's with our editor, and hopefully we'll see it next year. So more about that soon. And I'm also thinking about the next solo YA book and playing around with a lot of ideas. I have one in particular I really like, so I'm very excited about that. And then the scripts, of course, and then I can't talk about anything else, but there's a lot going on.
It sounds like a lot's going on, and I can't wait to see everything that you do. And can you tell us where your stories come from, unless where is it always like something that's super personal to you? Do you ever just see someone and that's where where do the ideas percolate from?
I think they really come from, I mean, so many of them come from personal things, but they also come from life and from people you meet and from stories you hear. And for me to write it, I have to really find the personal angle for me, because I have to in some way be able to relate to it. Because I really, now that I'm writing things that are personal, I really want to put myself in there and my emotions, because I know for me, that one, it will ring more authentic, and two, it will keep me invested in it in the way I need to be to write the book.
Cool. Well, I am so excited. Can you close us out with a couple of pages so that we get a taste?
Absolutely, I'd be honored. And thank you so much, Danielle. Those questions were amazing. If you would like to do all events with me, I would love it.
I would. This is a good way for us to catch up.
Exactly. Okay. I'm reading from early on in the book. One time I read from like back here, and someone was in the audience like holding onto his ears. Spoilers, so no spoilers. My dad perches on the corner of the bed, feet on the floor, looking like he might spring up and away at any moment. At first, I think something horrible has happened to my mom, or that he's going to tell me the dog is dead, or the cat is dead, or my grandparents are dead. I rummage through my memories, trying to unearth the last time he sat down like this to talk to me, and I can't remember anything prior to age 13, when he looked at my mom and said, "I didn't speak teenager even when I was one. She's in your hands now." I sit down next to him, several inches between us. I'm wondering where my mom is and if she knows he's here. And then he says, "Your mom asked me to talk to you." For some reason, my mind goes immediately to Shane and the hayloft. Please don't let them know. It is the worst thing I can imagine, because my life so far has been reasonably quiet and reasonably uneventful, which is apparently why I can't write with any sort of feeling. I've never even had a cavity. And then my dad clears his throat and begins talking in this low, serious voice, which is not at all like his usual voice. And as he talks, he starts to cry, something I've never seen him do before. I'm thinking, stop this, don't cry, not you, dads don't cry, which is stupid really, but there you go. I think I say don't cry, or maybe I say nothing, because he is telling me that he doesn't love us anymore, my mom and me. That the past 18 years of my life, the 18 years that make up my entire life, have been a really horrible joke, and that he never actually loved us at all, not once. Or that maybe he did for a tiny while, but love dies when the objects of that love are as unlovable as my mom and I are. And unfortunately, it's our fault that we can't be his family anymore. That he needs us to go far away so he never has to look at us again because our mere presence makes him ill. He's still talking, but I'm not listening. I'm too focused on the way the tears are rolling into the stubbly beard on his chin and disappearing. Where are they going? Clue, he says, my nickname, the one that only he calls me. Our special name, the one just for us, and secret bakery runs before school, and secret ice creams before dinner, and driving too fast and watching scary movies. All the things my mom is too momish to allow, even though all my life it's always been Claudine and Lauren, Lauren and Claudine, the Llewellyn women, because mom never actually took dad's name, and we've always been more Llewellyn than Henry. Which basically means we believe in possibility and magic instead of always looking at the practical, in other words, darkly realistic side of things. Meanwhile, my dad has stood on the perimeter, not as much like us, watching and applauding and joining in as much as he can. All my life, everyone loves us, the two Llewellyns. Everyone, apparently, but him. Clue, he says again, it's not because I don't care about you. Even now at this moment, as the floor of my room is disappearing, as I'm staring down past my feet, wondering how I'll ever stand again, he can't bring himself to say love, as in, it's not because I don't love you. And then he says, I just can't have a family right now. And maybe he says none of this, but it's what I hear. And at that moment, I stop looking at his tears and his beard, and I'm staring at the place where the floor used to be. All I can think is how 1 minute the floor was there, and now it's not. How you could go through an entire day, every day, not thinking about the floor or the ground, because you just assume it will always be there until it isn't.
Okay. I'm going to ask one more question because I just noticed one, and this one is from Justin Conway.
Oh, my husband.
And he asks, what advice do you have for someone whose floor has suddenly disappeared?
That's amazing. I would say you will get that floor back. It may not be the same exact floor, but you can rebuild it. You are stronger than you know. You are resilient. You are amazing. As my mom used to say, you are the only you there is in this entire world, which is extraordinary when you think about it. And so I know all of our floors have disappeared this year in 2020, this terrible year. But just believe in yourself and your own strength and be easy on yourself. And just know that the floor, again, it may not look like the floor that disappeared, but you are rebuilding that floor, and you can rebuild that floor and make it even stronger than ever before.
I think that's where we end. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you, Danielle. Truly, this was just amazing. You're so, you know, I love and adore you.
I think Daniel's
Unmute and say goodnight to everyone.
Yeah.
I only have to second it. That was, what a wonderful conversation. You should write. I know you are a writer. You should be writing questions for other interviewers. That's all I have to say. Congratulations on the book's release and on the upcoming release of The Ravens. I wanted to thank both of you. I want to thank everybody for coming. I will tell you that I went to my favorite soup place that's been closed for 3 months, and their floor had fallen. They lost their floor. Like it was actually like it had collapsed while they were gone. So if maybe I have to give them the book so they can see the floor can be replaced.
Absolutely. Oh my God.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your tour. Where are you virtually off to next?
Virtually off to Australia in the morning, very early my time.
Wow. Well, good day to you. And and we're looking forward to all the work that both of you are doing, both on the page and on the screen. So
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy reading.